They say that time is a straight line, but in the world of love, hate, and fate, it's a circle that we can never escape. Every choice has a cost, every hero has a shadow, and every story has a soul. Welcome to Love, Hate, and Fate.
Lyra made a sound that was suspiciously close to a laugh again, then winced because even that hurt. Kaelen, finding himself too exhausted to defend his pride, obeyed. They sat opposite one another at the edge of the pool. The water's surface reflected them not as they were, but as shifting versions of themselves. Armored, crowned, bloodied, younger, older, shadowed, radiant. Sometimes the reflections were clearly Kaelen and Lyra. Sometimes they were strangers wearing their bones. Vespera set her staff down and knelt between them.
Hands.
Neither moved. Vespera looked from one to the other.
I just dragged you out of deletion itself. Do not make me wrestle you like children.
This time Lyra obeyed first, offering her hand across the pool. After a moment, Kaelen took it. The instant their palms met, the water lit up.
The shared heart kicked. Condition detected, memory bleed. Condition detected, soul recoil. Stabilization possible, external intervention.
Vespera pressed 2 fingers to the glowing bond where it crossed their joined wrists and began to murmur in a language neither of them knew, yet both somehow understood. It sounded like the first shape of words, older than the system's cold geometry. The pool responded. Silver water rose in thin threads and wound around Kaelen and Lyra's hands, their wrists, their forearms. It should have felt cold. It felt like standing inside a remembered embrace. The pressure in Kaelen's skull eased first. Then the jagged edges of foreign memories dulled. Lyra sucked in a sudden trembling breath, and he felt her panic recede by one desperate step. Vespera's voice never faltered. When she finally lifted her fingers, the water settled.
Conditions partially stabilized. Memory bleed, dormant. Soul recoil, reduced. Warning, recurrence, likely under emotional distress or forced fusion.
Silence fell over the garden. Kaelen let go of Lyra's hand more slowly than he meant to. Vespera sat back on her heels and studied them.
There,
she said.
You should now be capable of speaking without inheriting each other's childhoods.
Lyra swallowed.
You knew? I know a great many things,
Vespera replied.
Most of them unpleasant.
Kaelen fixed her with a hard stare.
Start with the important one. Why do you know our names?
Vespera was quiet long enough that even the silver leaves seemed to listen.
Because,
she said at last,
they are not entirely your names.
The dusk in the hollow deepened. Kaelen felt Lyra tense through the bond. Vespera continued before either could interrupt.
You are Kaelen Thorn and Lyra of the Void. I will not insult you by pretending otherwise. You were born, shaped, wounded, and loved, what little the world allowed of it, as yourselves. But beneath those lives run older threads.
She looked to the pool. Its reflected constellations shifted, and the water clouded into an image. A city of white towers beneath an enormous moon. Gold banners and silver banners hanging side by side.
At the beginning,
Vespera said softly,
there was no Solaris Empire, no Nightwalker Rebellion, no sacred hatred between sun and void. There were houses, courts, covenants. The sun and moon were not enemies. They were 2 disciplines of the same light.
The pool rippled. A young man appeared in moon-silver robes, dark-haired and solemn-eyed. Beside him stood a woman in molten gold silks, her face unmistakably Lyra's and yet not Lyra's at all. Softer, untouched by the hard angles of survival. Beautiful in a way that hurt. Kaelen's chest tightened.
Ethelred of the Lunar House,
Vespera said, touching the water near the prince.
And Princess Solène of the Dawn Court.
Lyra's fingers curled against her own knees.
The first pair you remember.
Vespera went on.
Not the first to exist, merely the first the veins allowed you to glimpse.
The pool showed the prince and princess reaching for one another across a balcony rail.
They loved each other.
Lyra whispered. Vespera's expression gentled, but only with sadness.
Yes.
The image shattered. Now the same city burned. Black spires stabbed through white towers. Soldiers in divided colors slaughtered one another in the streets. Above them all, the sky cracked open into the first mouth of the labyrinth.
What happened?
Kaelen asked, though part of him already knew he would hate the answer.
Fear.
Vespera said.
Ambition. Men in crowns realizing that a united current is harder to control than a divided one. The sun and moon houses together could touch the source, the true heart of essence, before the system reduced it to levels, classes, and sanctioned paths. Some believed union would elevate humanity. Others saw only the end of thrones, priesthoods, armies, and borders. So they made a prison and called it salvation.
The Labyrinth,
Lyra said. Vespera nodded.
The Labyrinth, the system, the reset protocol, different names for the same machine, a cage built to keep humanity fragmented, measurable, and afraid. When souls carrying opposing currents draw too close, truly close, the prison reacts. It seeds conflict. It rewrites history. It creates doctrines. It raises empires on one side and rebellions on the other, and teaches both to call division holy.
The pool darkened again. This time, Kaelen saw armies in gold and violet kneeling before different banners, each convinced the other represented corruption. He saw generations of children trained into inherited hatred. He saw the first crude versions of hunters and ranks and branded classes. He saw the old harmony ground down into something weaponized and manageable. He felt sick. Lyra looked worse.
That's not possible,
Kaelen said, though the protest sounded hollow even to him.
My empire
Is built on older bones than it knows,
Vespera said.
as is her rebellion. Do you imagine revolutions are immune to cages simply because they rattle the bars? The Nightwalkers were born from the same split wound. They define themselves against the sun, and so the prison is pleased.
Lyra laughed once, bitter and breathless.
So we're all puppets.
No,
Vespera said.
puppets are innocent. This world has had many chances to ask better questions.
Kaelin's jaw tightened.
Then why hunt us? Why put a bounty on us? Why deploy the Star Eater now?
For the first time, something like anger sharpened Vespera's face.
Because you are proof.
She said. The words landed harder than any shout. She rose and walked slowly around the pool, robes whispering over stone.
The world above can tolerate monsters. It can tolerate tyrants, rebels, war, famine, atrocity. All of those can be folded into doctrine, taxed, ranked, and buried beneath new slogans. But an eclipse pair.
She looked back at them, one eye blue with grief, the other gold with old fire.
An eclipse pair is proof that the split is artificial.
The silver leaves above them rang softly.
If the sun and void can merge,
Vespera continued.
if two soul currents raised to hate each other can become stronger together than apart, then the foundational lie of your civilization begins to crack. The empire loses its divine purity. The rebellion loses its righteous opposition. The system loses the mathematical certainty of endless conflict.
She stepped closer to Kaelen and Lyra again.
And if an awakened eclipse pair reaches the core before being severed, the prison may open.
Lyra's voice was barely a whisper.
May.
Vespera looked away.
There are not enough survivors of previous convergences to improve the wording.
The answer chilled the garden. Kaelen glanced at Lyra. Her face had gone pale in the silver light, but her chin was still set with that stubborn, defiant angle that always made something in his chest tighten.
You said previous convergences.
He said slowly.
How many?
Vespera was quiet. Then she answered with brutal honesty.
Enough that the world has become efficient at killing them.
The pool stirred. Images rose one after another, too fast to fully hold. 2 warriors back to back on a field of black snow. A girl in priestess white touching foreheads with a scarred soldier in violet mail. A pair of siblings with mismatched crowns reaching for each other through opposite sides of a sealed gate. A woman in sun armor driving a spear through the chest of a man whose face was half shadow, both of them weeping. Lyra made a sound like something cracking.
Stop!
Vespera lifted a hand. The pool stilled at once.
No.
Lyra said, voice shaking now.
Tell me.
So Vespera did.
You have found each other before.
She said, gaze moving between them.
Again and again, across altered ages and rewritten histories. Sometimes as lovers, sometimes as enemies. Once as twins born under a false prophecy. Once as teacher and student. The forms change. The currents do not. The prison cannot entirely erase what the source once joined.
Kaelen could not seem to fill his lungs.
And every time,
Vespera said, softer now.
the world moved to break you.
Lyra's eyes dropped to the glowing seam still faintly visible around her wrist.
And every time we failed.
Vespera's silence confirmed it. The windless garden felt suddenly very cold. Kaelen found his voice first, though it came rough.
In the first life,
He said, seeing the balcony again.
Ethelred and Solen, what happened to them?
Vespera closed her eyes. When she opened them, she looked older than before.
They tried to choose each other,
She said,
and the world answered with war.
The hollow remembers the echo. Constellations bleed from the pool. I know your hands, Ethelred. 1,000 lives, a single rule. We burn together, Solen. This cycle never ends.
The clock may have stopped for today, but the cycle continues. If you felt the love, shared the hate, or just want to see where fate takes us next, make sure to hit that subscribe button, ring the bell. Until the next chapter, thank you for watching Love, Hate, and Fate, and being part of the story.